Hi, today's all about mixing matte acrylic paint in a palette of my choosing, so let's dive right in.
Hi, Kan here. I'm very excited because I'm finally getting to make a little bit of art in my new studio on my new drafting table, which this will be my first time using it. So I'm excited to have you join me for that. Today I have a little project. I recently went on a trip to Minnesota, took lots of pictures of some beautiful woods. I'll try to post some of those up here for you, and am very inspired, along with the view that I have now out my studio window, which I'm taking a snapshot right now for you that I will share. And I am just been itching to make some woods photos, but I'm also in the process of organizing some paints and need to do some palette creation. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of kind of pushing some paint around, get myself back in the groove. Been a little while since I've made some art because I've been busy with moving and painting and all kinds of things and traveling. So I'm really excited to be here today with my art supplies and ready to make some art. So I will probably do a voiceover from here on out so that I can just I think I'll go ahead and use this page to swatch some colors. I'm reorganizing my paints. I want to mix some colors that is going to be my theme for a whole series. So I kind of want to decide what those are. I'm expecting to mix some custom colors for that. So let's just dive in and I'll get started doing that. I'm using these jars. I really love these. I've used these several times as I'm creating paint colors. And I really like them because there's no lip on the inside, so you don't have to deal with paint getting caught on the inside. They're easy to clean out. They're a nice small size. I can swatch the color on the lid, and then I have them in my paint cart, easy to see and use. So that's what I'm going to be creating colors into. So that's just kind of going to be a process of deciding what I want to use. I'm going to use another sketchbook here as a kind of as a palette, but then it will become a background too. I think I'll just use this page and do some mixing and color development maybe between these two.
I will happily use many different brands of paint. My biggest criteria is that I like to use matte paint because that makes it easy to use other media on top of it later. So this particular brand is Flash Paint, and it's actually called a vinyl paint, which doesn't sound very matte to me, but it actually is very nice at receiving other media, colored pencil, whatever, on top of later. So it is one of my favorites, and I have a number of those. But I do also have a lot of other brands. Like this is a golden fluid paint here, which is not at all matte. It's actually rather glossy. It is very highly pigmented though, so my thought is that I can mix a little bit of this in with the matte acrylic, and because it has so much pigment it won't take very much, and I can actually use end up with a matte paint because there will be more matte paint than the glossy paint. So that's my thinking. I want to use what I have on hand. I have a whole cart full of paint, as you saw, and I want to use what I have. I also have some paints that I want to get used up so that I can clear them out. Like there's just a little left in the bottle, or they're starting to get dry. And so this is a good time for me to use some of those up as well. So I'm thinking about not just like all the colors that I need, because I will mix colors as I paint, but I want to have colors that I can use to mix from. Also, when the paints need diluted a little, I'm using this airbrush medium by Golden. I feel like that kind of helps make the paints more matte as well, and the ones that have gotten a little bit dried out, it kind of helps revive them and makes them usable again. I'm taking a look at my reference photo again, one of them that I took. These photos are all, in greens, or as they were in nature, and that's not necessarily what I want to limit my color scheme to, but I'm kind of looking more at values. I need to have some super darks, like colors that I would use as a black, almost the darkest values, and then I also need to have some light values that I can mix in there too. I'm not as worried about mid-range values, because I figure those I can mix with the darks and the lights, but I need to be sure I have both ends of the value spectrum available to use. This super dark teal that I have made here, I can use as a black, but I can also mix in a light value with it to make it a lighter value as well. So now that I've settled on that teal color, I feel like I want to kind of record it somewhere. I'm using this page that I had previously swatched some acrylic wash on the right side. I had all these little empty leaf shapes left, so I'm just kind of using that to record the colors that I decide on and for this little project. So I've got my little jar of that. I'm putting a little swatch on the lid so that I can see it easily in my cart, and on to the next color. So for this next color, this is a little paint pot from Target, which I got some years ago. I really liked the color. It was like kind of a fluorescent coral color. But I am down to the last little bits in there, as you can see, and it's gotten kind of thick. So that's when that airbrush medium will come in handy to thin that back down a little bit. But it'll be nice to get that last little bit out of that jar, and I can throw it away and move on then. I have so many little jars of paint that have just tiny bits in them, and so I'm happy to get them consolidated a little bit and made more useful again. My old studio was not very temperature controlled. That was one of my objections to it. So things got way too cold in the winter, way too hot in the summer. That's not good for art supplies, particularly paint. And so some of these paints have suffered a bit from that. So I'm kind of just trying to revive what I can. Now, at first glance, you might have thought this paint was trash because it is so thick. But I was able to mix it in with that airbrush medium, and then I also mixed in some other fresher fluid paints and actually was able to revive it pretty well. So don't give up too easily on your paints is the moral to that story. Now I'm adding in some fluorescent PBO paint, which is a matte paint. It is a paint I like, but it has also suffered the ravages of temperature and time, and as you can see is quite glunky and clumpy and not the consistency you would want it to be. But I do really love the color, so I'm going to see if I can also revive it with the airbrush medium and some perhaps better conditioned paints. Getting it scooted up here where you can see it a little easier. I'm just trying to get things mixed and stirred in together, looking for some paint. Now this paint is is good condition. It's the last bit of some of that flash vinyl paint, which is also a lovely to work on top of paint. And so I'm mixing some of that in there. As you can see, it's going to be a lighter, more muted tone, so it's going to tone down that fluorescent a bit, and also hopefully help kind of improve the consistency of this paint. I'm also adding in a little bit of orange. This, I think it's called Japanese orange flash paint, one of my favorite oranges, and it also is a nice consistency. So giving it all a really good stir here, trying to get out some of those clumps and bumps and get it a more usable consistency. So I am pretty happy with the consistency. It's still a slight bit lumpy, but I think it'll work, especially in painting, loose paintings. If I want to do a more illustrated painting, I'm probably going to go to my acrylic wash instead anyway. So these are a little bit more for my loose brush paintings, or even palette knife paintings, or abstract art. So I think it'll all be fine. This next color I'm working on is mixing some Blick matte acrylic, which has a wonderful line of matte acrylics. They are not always the colors that I want, but they are very nice matte paint to work with. And I'm mixing it with some orange Lucas paint. I want to just kind of mellow out or add a yellow touch to that Lucas paint orange. The Lucas paint is also a pretty nice matte paint. It's a nice surface to work on top of. It doesn't really advertise itself as a matte paint, which is interesting. But so that's kind of a new discovery for me, but I have really enjoyed using it as well. It's kind of a good economical version, because you can get these large bottles for like $8 or $9. That next paint that I mixed was a very dark brown. I kind of made it a warm brown. I have the blues and greens that I can definitely neutralize it with, but you can see that it's another color that I could use as a black or as a darkest value. Taking a minute to do some more swatching and some labeling so I can kind of see where I stand. There are some colors that I'm using as is out of jars that I already have, including this Red Earth by Josana. It is a matte acrylic paint in a tube, and I think I will include this color just as is. I don't feel the need to mix up a batch based on this. That'll work as is, and there's several colors. I'm not really showing the ones right now yet that I am using. Here you can see me taking a little bit dried up white paint, and I'm adding to an orange, and I'm adding a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white to make a little bit more peachy, I guess, colored orange. Just a little lighter version of that orange. I'm adding in some Titan Buff by Golden, which is a fluid paint. It will kind of help soften up the consistency along with adjusting the color. I don't worry too much about keeping track exactly of my mix for these colors. I'm not going to try to make the exact color again. I'm just making this quick and easy while I kind of work on a series of painting that gives me a kind of a quantity to work with. I will add to and adjust as I go. If you've noticed, I don't worry too much about my paintbrushes being perfectly clean as I dip into the jar, and that's okay with me. I don't mind if these colors kind of morph and change gradually over time as I use them. I think that actually kind of gives some life to my paintings and my work. I am not one of those that's worried about having the exact color used in every painting. So I shoot more for getting things in the ballpark, or just like an eyeball of what I want them to be, and call it good at that. This next color looks really dark on camera, but it's actually this really pretty olive green. It's another one of those paints from Target, which are actually pretty nice matte acrylic paints. But as you can see, this one has gotten kind of old and clunky, and needs some help, and it was the tail end of the bottle. So I knew I wanted some more of a similar color. It's like this really dark olive green. I'm adding in some of the golden fluid. I think that was green gold, actually, the color that I used there, and am mixing it in to achieve the color I want. And now I am just trying out all these colors that I've made, and the ones that I'm using as is, and just kind of seeing how they all blend together, what I can get by mixing them, and how it's going to be to just use them in practice. I realized that this yellow that I had by Lucas was just a little too lemony, a little too bold for what I wanted. I wanted something a little lighter, a little bit more mellow, maybe a little bit warmer. So I'm adding in some Titan Buff paint along with some, just a little tiny touch of the orange, just to kind of warm that up. And I want more of a golden glow type color that I can mix with other colors, and so that's what I was after there. So I'm kind of checking this to see if I can achieve that kind of underpainting color that I used on those watercolor scenes that I really liked. I really like a warm underpainting with some hints of that fluorescent pink in there, and oranges I really like. Quickly sketching in some trees with a Stabilo pencil on the still wet paint there, and just itching to do some woods, wanting to kind of try out these paints. So I'm just kind of playing around with the paints, seeing how they mix, see if there's all the colors that I would want to have, and just kind of experimenting and playing with them. My sketchbooks are not places for masterpieces. They're places that I kind of play around, see what the paints can do, see if they work the way I want, and just to kind of try things out and experiment before I go to make art on a canvas. So I do some illustrations that my patrons end up getting. I do some things that I end up using in my sketchbooks, but for the most part it's just a place to try out, experiment. Not always very pretty, but I always learn something from working in there, and that's my goal. Right now you can see me experimenting with that red violet, which is not a color I frequently use, but I'm kind of seeing what it can do. I'm finding that it makes real pretty kind of gray tone colors when mixed, and I am so far liking how it's behaving with the other colors. I'm also playing around how to do, I don't want to just paint brown trees, so I'm trying to introduce a lot of different colors into those tree trunks. I also feel very challenged at painting loose, so I'm really trying to keep things loose here and not be too precise with it. I know that this isn't going to be a finished painting because I've got those color swatches over there in the corner. So that just gives me a sense of freedom to just kind of experiment and play here. So I haven't really tried out my greens yet, so I'm going to start adding those in. This is that olive green that I made that can be very dark. It's a little bit more diluted here with the colors that I still had on my brush. I also am using that golden brand olive green to good effect here, it is a good flat paint. I'm using the end of the paintbrush to scrape away some paint and expose that underpainting underneath, and just trying to work very fast and just mashing some paint down, being kind of thick about it, checking the consistency of the paint.
So I've mixed some colors and evaluated some colors, and this is kind of what I have on hand now, but what I really want to do is come up with some colors like this. I want to do some woods paintings kind of in these tones. The reference photos I took are all very green, which is wonderful, but I want some more colors involved in it. And so now I think I'm gonna kind of swatch and see if I can make from the colors I've mixed, and kind of see if I have the means to make these colors. So I'm going to put this to the side up here, match to, and then I have this sketchbook here that I'm going to try these colors on. So I'm going to start with these pinks. Excuse the lawnmower noises outside. And this this particular batch was mixed from some paints that have gotten kind of bumpy, but I think it'll be okay when I'm just kind of painting loose on a canvas. I'm not too worried about that, but I am going to want to lighten it up quite a bit to be a little more like the pink in this. But I think that'll be fine. I have this nice buff color to mix it with. I might also add in some touches of this yellow. It's kind of a, I would describe this as kind of a warm lemon yellow. I think those will look really pretty together. And this will also work for accents on leaves and for some foliage down here too with my greens. So browns, I have basically two. I have this super dark brown for the darkest tones, like the almost black areas that I have here. And so I will use this brown as is, but I can also mix it with the orange. To just tone it down a bit. Also the yellow. And then I have this red earth, which is a matte paint. Which can also mix with these, the dark brown, the oranges, and the yellows. I also have the dark green, this really olivey green that I made. have this lighter pre-made color by Golden that is much more of a, they call it an olive green. It's a much lighter olive green. So I'll be able to mix that. And then of course add some yellow. So what is kind of a new color for this enterprise is, oh, I forgot the teal. I have this kind of dark teal, which you can see I used both mixed with the green, and you see some teal in here. This was done with watercolor, by the way, so I am wanting to replicate some of these colors with this acrylic paint. I think that'll be nice. And then I have I'm introducing, or thinking about introducing, two new colors that are not in my sample. I'm gonna get the lids back on these. And that is this very, it's a flash paint, what they call it, turquoise blue, which is much brighter, but I think it could be pretty effective mixed in with these, either with the greens or that teal, either one, or the yellow. I think that will add some real fun pop in there. If I want, I can mix it with some of the white, and if I decide I want more of a sky color instead of the pink, I can do that. And then the other color that I am considering, I have not decided yet because it is a whole nother color to be adding in, but I think this can be really fun mixed with the browns or with the greens to kind of, if I want to kind of neutralize some of the other colors, I can add this. I can also, if I just want to pop a color, I don't know, what do you guys think of the purple? Let me know. I can also tone it down. I also think it might be interesting mixed with the yellow, might make an interesting neutral. I think maybe I'll leave it just to kind of tone some of the other colors. So what do you think? I think those are a pretty good match.
So now I'm just going to make a swatch page of all of these colors, both the ones I mixed and the ones I'm using as is from the brands. And so that I can just kind of have a page here to see what the colors are, what I have. Unfortunately, these don't all look very true to color here on camera, but it will be useful for me to have this page and just kind of making sure I have everything represented that needs to be. I'll keep these colors separated out on a tray while I'm working on this particular series. They will eventually live in my cart with all the other paints, but for now I'm kind of having this little curated set of paints that I know exactly what they are and what they'll do, and that can be very helpful.
And from those, I think I can come up with something along this line. Okay, so I've been working on picking a palette that kind of has this look. I did this sketch. It's just a watercolor sketch I just did. I was in some beautiful woods in Minnesota where we were camping, and I did these sketches there, and I really like the photos I took are all green, but I wanted to bring in some other colors into it, and I really like these colors. So I kind of wanted to choose a palette that kind of went along with this in acrylic, and so I chose some colors, some that I already have. I like to use matte acrylics. So I chose those colors and then mixed some of my own to complement those, and ended up with, like, this was kind of when I was mixing and experimenting, and I believe this kind of ties in pretty nicely. I've drawn in some trees that I plan to paint on there, and then I also have made some swatches here. Now, one thing I need to test, because I used a mix of paints, I'm trying to really focus on using what I have on hand, and not all my paints are matte. So what I want to check now with these swatches I made is how well they work with pencil, how matte they are, like what kind of medium. So this is a very soft lead pencil. It's a 9B, very soft lead. I'm just checking to see, so I know what to expect. This is a Stabilo white pencil. Works great. I think I tried to mix all of them with some matte acrylic paint so that they would retain some of that, and it looks like so far it's looking like these are pretty good. So I have here a colored pencil because I'd like to do some finishing work with colored pencil, and then I have a Neocolor 2, which I also often use, and it looks like everything is working real well. Some of the paints that I used to mix were glossy, and they are very hard to work on top of, but I think I got them mixed with enough of the matte paint that is going to work out just fine. So good news, and I'm happy with all of these paints. So I am ready to continue on with creating a piece.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.